Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host, Joe Kuzma, and I am here today once again with no agenda. I'm just going with a live mic, and that could be a very dangerous thing for those who know me. I like to speak my mind sometimes, but I don't have a whole lot of bad things to say about my Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to say I'm going to say we today, because you know what? It was a pet peeve of someone who said, I think it was Tevin, who's always got great stuff to say on Twitter. I love you. Thank you for listening. As usual, one of his pet peeves was when people said we, like we win and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. You know, I totally, I'm with it. I just, sometimes, you know, it's one of those things that come out and it's one of those things we want to say, and it's we. That's because it's Steelers Nation, baby, right? And we are all family. And I'm still buzzing over the Pittsburgh Steelers' 24-16 victory over those lousy Cincinnati Bengals. Who really likes the Bengals, the Bungles, whatever you want to call them? But there's a lot of questions to be answered, and the Steelers being fairly successful these first two games of the season, it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward. I really felt during the offseason the Steelers really worked on their depth on the depth chart, and that's what I want to talk about today is what's going to happen going forward. There are a number of players still on the shelf. The Steelers felt the injury bug in the preseason and training camp, maybe as much as any other team. Injuries are something that, you know, it's just part of the game. It happens in the NFL. Every team has to deal with it. And you notice it happened on Monday night. Jay Cutler, he ends up getting hurt. What did the Bears do? They had an insurance policy. They went out and got Brian Hoyer, a quarterback that I actually wanted the Steelers to pursue pretty badly. But I do understand that you just can't afford to have these all-star teams. I've said that many times throughout all of these episodes of the Steel City Underground podcast. So speaking of which, for those of you who have called in, I will be answering some of those questions here in the near future. For those who want to call in to the hotline, all you got to do is call, leave a name, tell us where you're coming from, because that's always fun. I listen to Gil Brandt a lot on Late Hits, Sirius XM NFL Radio, because I'm on the road late at night. And Gil happens to have been, if you don't know Gil, he's a old timer with the NFL. He's been around for ages, maybe even pre-merger, was probably worked in every capacity there could be with the Dallas Cowboys, and he's been to every small town across America. He knows where everything is on the map. The guy, his name should be Ram McNally. For those of you who even know what that reference is, that was Google Maps before there was Google Maps, and it used to be this big book that you lugged around. But anyways, name, where you're from. Once again, 203-900-4, SCU 4, the number 4. Steel City Underground SCU. Give it a call. Now, I'm very excited. The Steelers, they have a lot of depth. I thought they really worked on this in the off season. Some of that has not materialized just yet, but today I'm going to be talking about those players that are missing in action and what happens when those players return. At the top of the list is Marcus Wheaton, because if you didn't know already, Big Ben is the player we always love, but he hasn't looked so sharp this season so far, has he? I mean, look what happened in the Washington game. You had the fumble, you had the ball that was picked right off of the turf, etc., etc. And then last week, with just the other day on Sunday with the Bengals, throws a couple picks. But Ben has thrown 6 TDs. It's the most he's thrown in the first 2 games of a season. Most TDs in first 3 games played in a season. He threw 8 in 2012. He's lighting it up. Even though he's making mistakes, he's not even sharp yet. He's going to get even sharper when I talk about this guy who's coming back, hopefully this week. Said he could have played in Sunday's game, and that is Marcus Wheaton, who is nursing a shoulder injury. Mike Tomlin held him out of the game because he hadn't practiced. I feel that's okay. I'm totally cool with that. You know why? Even though you want your best players out there, I think the Steelers are rolling just fine even without Marcus Wheaton. That's not necessarily good for Marcus Wheaton in a contract year, and I had also written an article just before the season kicked off saying Marcus Wheaton could be the key to this Steelers offense, and he still can. He still can. Let me tell you, Marcus Wheaton, the numbers don't lie. Throughout the years, Marcus Wheaton has been a solid, reliable contributor to this Pittsburgh Steelers offense. In 2014, he caught 53 receptions, 644 yards, only the 2 touchdowns. Now, Antonio Brown wasn't necessarily a touchdown machine either, and we know the Steelers are spreading the ball all over. You look and see what happened on Sunday, where a wide receiver doesn't even get one of the three TD passes from Big Ben, went one each to the tight ends, Xavier Grimble and Jesse James, and then, of course, the one to D'Angelo Williams, the first one he's ever caught as a Steeler, the first receiving touchdown. He's been here over a year. Look at what he's doing, and can you believe it? Marcus Wheaton is going to be added to this. Marcus Wheaton with 44 receptions, 749 yards, 5 TDs last year, and he totally lit it up, mostly in part to a big game against the Seattle Seahawks, where he had nearly 200 yards receiving, and a lot of that was they're covering Antonio Brown in that game. They're also worried about Martavis Bryant, but you know what? You got to be worried about Sammy Coates now too, and you still have AB. And you're also going to have some other guys coming back too. And this is a contract year for Wheaton, so we've already seen what life after Wheaton's like. Let's see what life with Wheaton is like. Hopefully this week against the Eagles, we're going to see just what Marcus Wheaton's going to bring, because 4 of his last 5 TDs came in the final 6 games of last year. If he's still hot on that stretch, just keeps going on that hot streak, 47 targets in those final 6 games. Man, let me tell you what. Like I said, Ben's already thrown 6 touchdowns, and Ben may not be his sharpest yet. Jeez. We have a 70, 80% Ben Roethlisberger. What's the rest of the league got? What happens when this guy's on his game 100% of the way? I cannot wait. That is going to be thrilling, but what about? We get Wheaton back. I did it. We get Wheaton back for the game against the Eagles, week 3 here on Sunday coming up. What happens in week 4, Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs, when this team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, we get Le'Veon Bell back. Holy cow. Quoted as being the second best wide receiver on this team, and he's a running back. You saw what D'Angelo does. D'Angelo has done just a tremendous job in Le'Veon Bell's place, leading rusher through 2 weeks so far in the NFL, eclipsed 10,000 yards in his career, and he's going to get a rest for a guy who's going to be better, younger, faster, stronger, also a contract year. They call him Juice. It's going to be interesting to see the type of reception he gets. I hope most Pittsburgh fans just let bygones be bygones, because we really don't know what happened. We never will. I just know that Le'Veon Bell, we'll put it this way, you're going to have Wheaton back this week, hopefully. And then you're going to get Le'Veon Bell back, and you still have D'Angelo Williams. And hopefully the Steelers stay relatively healthy throughout all of this. And then you're also going to add another guy in the backfield who lines up in different spots and has been kind of banged up and might be back soon. Rosie Nix, formerly from Kent State, the converted linebacker who's a fullback, is going to add to any of the blocking woes you may have seen. David Johnson's been doing pretty solid. We saw that the tight ends are doing pretty good as well. But Rosie Nix adds, as Mike Tomlin would say, another wrinkle. Maybe not a big receiving threat, but as I had already written over on SteelCityUnderground.com, I have an article up about whether or not the Steelers have replaced Heath Miller at the tight end position. That's a hot button topic, and I think they have. And I think they really don't care whether or not Other teams know that Jesse James has been out there for every snap for 2 straight games. You want to talk about confidence in that guy. So you put Xavier Grimbo or David Johnson out there, and he's going to block. But they did this with Matt Spaeth, too. And they also had Will Johnson last year in the same capacity, and with Rosie Nix. Rosie Nix on the same roster. He was on this team last year. So I don't really know that it tips your cap. I don't know that necessarily it's a tell if you were playing poker and you know that the Steelers are bluffing or whatnot because you put Rosie Nix on the field. It's just going to add to these personnel groupings. It's going to add to the dimensions and things that this offense can do. Rosie Nix, one heck of a blocker. Like I said, Le'Veon Bell's going to be back too. More bang for your buck both ways. But how about the guy who hasn't been placed on injured reserve? They've been reserving a roster spot for Senquez Golson. How about this secondary? And I said this in the last episode. Who would have thought that the Steelers would be playing? Look at the coverage. Ross Cockrell's getting a lot of that. And yes, he had some help, but you've got so many young bucks back there right now. Ross Cockrell's playing out of his mind right now at corner. You have William Gay. You have Sean Davis, who's been playing in the slot, and the guy that's supposed to have been playing in the slot, and they've been reserving the spot for Senquez Golson. We don't know what he's capable of. All we know is from his college days is he's a ball hawk. Imagine you put somebody out there, and I think he's going to be eased in. I think he's going to be eased in. He's definitely on the roster. He definitely has a spot. That spot could be taken. We haven't seen Justin Gilbert yet, and that's kind of a missing in action, but he was active. We'll see what happens. We saw Artie Burns out there. This secondary is just looking dynamite so far. What happens when you get Senquez Golson on the field as well? I don't know. None of us know. We haven't seen him yet. Could be good, could be bad. Could be the Steelers are just reloading to get more depth. They get a fresher body on the field, some fresh legs. How about a fresh Artie Burns, man? What a play. He made a big play just the other day against the Bengals. I mean, and the guy is fast. So is Sean Davis. Sean Davis is fast too, but Artie Burns is almost like watching Usain Bolt out there. And you get these guys some more experience, some more real live reps and snaps in a game environment. This is going to be nothing but good for all of these players. Now, I jumped to the defense real quick. I'm going to jump back to the offense, back to the defense, because we got 2 guys that are just put off to the side, just kind of reserved for now. We're going to see what happens. Ladarius Green all of a sudden being quoted as saying he's ready to play. He can't wait to get on the field. Now, we've heard this whole song and dance before. I'm confident he's going to get out there. Now, I might be totally talking out of my rear end because it is just a hunch. It's just my gut. I have nothing to go on, nor does anyone else. This has been like more top secret than a Hillary Clinton email server. Sorry, I brought the whole politics into this, but that's got to be kind of a funny joke. And if those of you don't get it, then whatever. It's just over your head. And I'm just going to get past that anyways, because definitely he's Pentagon level style confidential. The Steelers are not telling us anything about Ladarius Green. We don't know what's going on. There's all kind of rumors and this and that and the other thing. What is going to happen? And what will happen if he gets on the field? I've said this guy is basically Martavis Bryant as well. We thought Sammy Quotes. I haven't been quoted as saying Sammy Quotes. Sammy Coates, what a deep threat he has become. He is definitely opening up the field. He is young, raw, and getting better game by game. You had another player like him in Ladarius Green, who plays over 60% of his snaps in San Diego last season from the slot, and he could go out there. You got Jesse James playing in the slot too. And Green is just a big body, just like Bryant, just like James. Going to be able to send him down the seam. They're going to be able to do some very creative things on offense if this guy gets on the field. What happens when these Steelers return? The biggest one, maybe the biggest one, because really, the sack that was recorded as a sack, not really a sack, kind of Andy Dalton, not even really a tackle for a loss, but credited as a sack. And the Steelers have no sacks. Now, that's part of that is the scheme. I'm not really worried about it. I put a video up on Vine and Twitter and Facebook, and if you saw it, you saw how Cam Hayward got in there and Tuitt and Jarvis Jones all these guys collapsed on Dalton, and they were doing that pretty consistently. They just didn't really get to him and bring him down. And they haven't done that in 2 weeks. They didn't get to do that to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is pretty mobile, too. And for some reason, Andy Dalton's become a mobile quarterback as of recent, too. And, all the credit to them. They're professionals. They were younger players growing into their own. They're learning how to avoid the contact. Okay, cool. You got to give credit where credit is due. Let's see what happens. going forward. We're going to get some sacks. If we don't, I'm looking forward to getting Bud Dupree back on the field because this rotation, Jarvis has been out there quite a bit. Jarvis is playing the lion's share of the snaps, and he's playing on both sides now. So it's almost a three-man rotation with him and Arthur Moats and James Harrison. And Moats is capable of playing on both sides as well, but Harrison pretty much locked down on that right side and whoever you put on the other side. And Mike Tomlin in his press conference on Tuesday just said how he likes the Jarvis Jones and James Harrison combination. Jones gets some push, very solid against the run. I know a lot of people have dinged him because he just doesn't have the sacks. He doesn't have those digits that just the big total that goes up like and name a linebacker in Steelers history, really. Even Harrison, Woodley, you could go back. You can name as many of them as you want. Joey Porter, their coach. Dupree could be huge for this team. I'm really looking forward to Bud Dupree coming back and being a major contributor. They might still be this rotation because Bud was dressed for 16 games last year. I mean, technically he started 5 games. He got to see more time as the season wore on, and you expect to see that again this year too, as he's going to be eased in, missing about half the year because he's on injured reserve, and unless some other major player were to go on injured reserve and have to come back, I would assume if Bud is available and healthy to return, he will be designated to return at that time. 4 sacks last year, 17 tackles, solo tackles, 9 assisted tackles, and that's in a rotation. And he got some push as well, and he got to the QB. He got to the QB a lot early. So other guys cutting into his time. We're going to see what happens. He used to come in on, I called it like a hockey line, like a line change. And you had basically Moat and Jones, and then you had Dupree and Harrison. And now Chiquillo's kind of factored into that, but Chiquillo's getting about maybe 10 to 15% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks. So Bud Dupree is definitely maybe more confidence in Dupree's ability. It's not to say Chiquillo isn't a decent player, but Chiquillo taken in a 6th round versus a 1st round draft pick who is just a freak of an athlete. He had trimmed down in weight. Hopefully he's still in good condition, but he's still got to get, and this is something that has to be said for all of these guys coming back. There is something that's called football shape. And what that really means is it's getting out there and playing the game. If you're not out there and playing the game, you might be winded. You're going to get hit. You're not used to taking the hits. You get the wind knocked out of you. You got to come off the field here or there. It's going to take a game or two to get these guys back into where they need to be. Now, that's not necessarily true for someone like Senquez Golson, who has not really played at all. It's going to take him time to get accustomed to playing next to the guys that are all around him and feeling comfortable in this defense. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see, more than ever, I think Senquez Golson just isn't somebody you see unless there's injury this year. That's why Justin Gilbert is there. We may not see much of Gilbert either, but everybody else, all the names I named, Marcus Wheaton, pretty much good to go. Got to get in a little bit of football shape. Still going to see, I think, and this was posed on, if you guys listen to 93.7 The Fan, Cook and Pony, I think there was callers or there was a topic, and there was a whole thing to do about Marcus Wheaton and whether he's lost a spot. I don't think he's lost a spot. I said it again. I'm having trouble with Sammy Coates' name today. Quoting those guys on 93.7 The Fan, Sammy Coates, just a deep threat. Every ball going his way. I think one was like 14 yards, but all the rest are in the 30, 40, and 50-yard gain range. He's become a deep threat. Does he take Marcus Wheaton's spot? I don't know. Marcus Wheaton operated out of the slot a lot, but it also looks like Eli Rogers is a guy that's able to get out there, at least run a route, create some space, take some bodies off of like A-B, maybe on the outside for Coates. I'm going to see what happens. God, I feel so bad. Sammy, we're listening to this. Sammy Quotes, huh? I'm not retaking this one. Like I said, no agenda. I'm not even editing that one out. I kind of like that, though. Sammy Quotes. Little slip of the tongue. But Bud Dupree would be huge. Bud Dupree would have to get into some football shape. I think Ladarius Green, just based on the tight end situation, he'd probably be worked in there a lot more. And considering he plays like a wide receiver, as long as he gets some of that route running and stuff down, he probably cuts into that whole workload too. There's just so many weapons. You think about how well the Steelers offensively and defensively have played. They're the number one ranked team in this power rankings thing that comes out. That really doesn't mean anything, but it's just cool to think, hey, my team's number one. We're number one. There it is. Wheaton's coming back. No, guys, I didn't drink an energy drink like my writer Brian Roach. I am not having a beer or anything else here. I'm just that pumped up and excited about Steelers football. But sooner than later, Marcus Wheaton, Rosie Nix, the following week, Le'Veon Bell. Then we get to see what happens with the guys that are dealing with some more long-term issues in Senquez Golson, Ladarius Green, and Bud Dupree. But very good chance. More than half of these guys are definitely going to be back, and you might get all 6 of them at some point for a run towards number 7, the stairway to 7. Ladies and gentlemen, always appreciate you. I haven't begged for any reviews recently, but if you could figure that out through this whole iTunes, Apple, and iOS 10 mess. I haven't looked at my podcast app on it since I updated the phone, but hopefully it's a little bit easier to do. If not, you got to search for Steel City Underground and then leave the review once you find. You got to look for it like it's a new item, like you don't listen to this all the time, right? And if you do, I do appreciate you. I said that already. But until next time, be safe, be good, and I will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.